Welcome back into Bracket Buster Breakdown. It is time to take a look at another conference tournament happening in this conference. Very near and dear to my heart. My personal conference. You see the pennant behind me in all these videos. You see the shirt I'm wearing. It is the Big East. I love the Big East Conference. It's the only conference left that actually cares about basketball. Everything else being driven by football now. Obviously, you got mid-majors, like the one bid leagues that don't have football, but of the power ones, it's the Big East, and that's all that's left. The ACC, they used to care about basketball. They don't anymore. Big Ten, they don't care about basketball. Big 12, I'd argue they probably care the most about basketball out of the power conferences that aren't the Big East, but they still very much care about football more. But the Big East, it's the tradition of the Big East. This conference from 1979, obviously reborn in 2013. The tournament's been played at MSG since 1983. We are, 44th or 41st year, I should say, consecutively, if you count that 2020 tournament where they played like 3 games. But, there's just something special. The conference, it's so special. Everything about it is special. We've seen a team basically put football aside to come back to the Big East to do what the Big East used to be, and that is just be a absolute Goliath of college basketball. And of course, I'm talking about the defending national champion UConn. There's just something special about the Big East. I love the conference because of that. It's a bunch of, these basketball schools that they go at each other's throats because they absolutely despise each other. I absolutely love it watching from afar and close up. But this conference is so great. I think we have a very good conference tournament this year. With the way the bracket played out, I really can see a lot of possibilities happening. I'm so excited for this tournament. So let's just get into it. Here is our tournament bracket. It is 3 games on Wednesday. Then you get the 4 on Thursday. You get the semifinals Friday. And Saturday night, live from MSG, it is going to be the grand finale, the championship game. I'm so excited to watch, to see how this plays out because, like I said, I think there's a lot of possibilities. Of course, I'm just going to give my predictions on what I think is going to happen, but let's get into this. So, kicking us off on Wednesday, it is Butler and Xavier. Butler at one point was a tournament team. Then February came. They lost a lot of games in February. I think they lost 6 of the 8 games that they played in the month. And that basically burst their bubble tournament-wise. They have a very long outside shot. I think they still have to win out here and win the Big East to actually make the tournament. But NIT-wise, I think they're a shoe-in-ish. But they haven't played in a week, I believe. It will be a week from Wednesday, the last time they played. They did not play on the Saturday quadruple header. Quintuple header, I should say. Because quad is 4, quin is 5. The last time they did play was against Xavier. Xavier, it's also kind of fallen off. February was a rough month for them. The 4 wins that they have in February, 2 of them were DePaul. 1 was Georgetown and the other was Villanova. But, this team kind of has fallen off. I mentioned, I think, in the Big 12 preview, not a lot of conferences do double round robins, or a round robin, I should say, because they just have too many people. Big East, one of the very few conferences left that does this. So we've seen Xavier and Butler face off 2 times already this year. Butler won the meeting last Wednesday. That was at home at Hinkle Fieldhouse. And Xavier won the meeting in January. That was at the Cintas Center. They won that one by a score of 85-71. This is going to be a tough game to predict because I think both teams are kind of even on where they are right now. I'm giving the very slight advantage to Butler just because Xavier, they kind of look like they've fallen off the map, honestly. And I'm giving them credit for winning that past game against Xavier just a week ago. I think you get some momentum from that. And I see Butler advancing here. Moving on, we're going to move on to the second game on Wednesday. And honestly, if you get tickets to the Wednesday window at MSG, you are getting entertainment game-wise. I don't know if the games actually will be good, but storylines entertaining-wise, because the second game of the night, you have Providence going up against Georgetown. Obviously, there are wide stories there. You have, Ed Cooley going up against Providence for the third time this year. You have the Friars, who I think they're on the wrong side of the bubble. They have to win the Big East tournament, kind of just like Butler. They had their shot. They had opportunities to win. And then, the last 2 weeks happened where they lost to Marquette. They lost to Villanova. They lost to UConn. They had a win in there against Georgetown, but Providence swept the season series against Georgetown. They won the game at home in the end of January, 84-76. And just a week ago, they won in D.C., 71-58 against the Hoyas. I think it would be massively, massively funny if Georgetown got the victory here. They don't have the talent, I don't think. It is going to be a big struggle for them to win. I know that they put up a good performance against St. John's to close out the season on Saturday. I don't see that kind of performance happening again. I expect Providence to advance to the quarterfinals. And finally, the last game of Wednesday, it's going to be like a 9:30, maybe even 10 o'clock tip-off, depending on how long the other two games go. It is Villanova going up against DePaul. Villanova fighting for their tournament lives. They are hanging on by a thread to that last four in, going up against this DePaul team who is very, very awful. They have not won since December 30th. That was against Chicago State. They are 0-20 in conference. They finished the first winless season in Big East history. And that's saying something. Like I said, the history of this conference goes back a long ways. And for a record like that to be set, you got to be pretty bad to do it. I don't think there's really any debate on who's going to win here. It's going to be Villanova. But just on the off chance DePaul has the game of their life and they win their first conference game of the year against a Villanova team that's on the bubble at MSG, that would just be, it would be, no script could write that. That would just be so funny to watch, even though I know it's not going to happen because DePaul, so bad. Tony Stubblefield obviously got fired mid-season, one of the few coaching changes mid-season in college basketball this year. I'm hoping for a bright future for DePaul. I just don't know when that bright future happens, honestly. If they get Porter Moser, who has reportedly, come out on the internet and said he is happy in Oklahoma, which I think that's a tactic contract-wise, but I think he could get it turned around. I'm not saying that he's going to get it turned around and they're going to win the Big East. I'm saying he's going to get it turned around and somehow get DePaul in the tournament as a bubble team. I hope that's in the future for DePaul. I don't know when that actually happens. So we're going to move on to Thursday, quarterfinal Thursday, and man, do we have some good matchups here. The regular season champions, the defending national champions, the UConn Huskies, they return to their third home, Storrs South, as they call it. The Garden, well, I won't say it's going to be packed with UConn fans because they got to split tickets with the second game. And that second game, wow, that is going to be, there's going to be a lot of Johnnies and Tonys going at each other in that game. We'll get to it in a minute. But UConn will be going up against the winner of the Xavier Butler game on Wednesday night. I had Butler advancing. Butler, surprisingly, out of most of the Big East teams this year, they were the ones that in both games played UConn close. It was the beginning of January when UConn went to Hinkle Fieldhouse. They won 88-81 that game, much closer than the final score indicates. But then in beginning of February, they returned. I believe this game was in Hartford, but it was a 71-62 victory for UConn in that one. And like I said, Butler has played UConn close. Do I expect, some monumental thing to happen in this game where Butler does the inevitable or unbelievable and wins this game? No, I think it's inevitable that UConn wins this game because UConn is just that much better. I expect them not to roll, but I expect them to kind of control the game and get victory here. Now we move on to this game. This game, my gosh, what a game this is going to be. You have Seton Hall Pirates from South Orange, New Jersey, just right across the border from New York, right across the street from MSG, basically, going up against the St. John's Red Storm. Of course, St. John's from Queens. They play half their home games at Madison Square Garden. This is going to be a technical home game by the Nets rankings. It is a home game for St. John's. And my, oh my, what a game we have here. Both teams currently are on the right side of the bubble. I believe Seton Hall is most likely the last four by right now. St. John's is the last four in. This game, if this wasn't paired with the UConn game, because UConn is going to have a lot of people traveling to this game, the Garden would be on fire. If you switched this game and put it in the evening window and obviously flipped one of the other games, that place would just be an absolute madhouse with Seton Hall and St. John's fans. That place is going to be electric. I know there's not going to be as many people there because of the UConn thing early. I do expect a lot of UConn fans probably to stick around, though, because this game just is going to be entertaining. I mean, we can look back. It was 3 weeks ago, I think. It was Seton Hall going up against St. John's. The game was, I believe it was at UBS Arena. It was not at Madison Square Garden. It was not at Carnesecca. St. John's loses that game. They fall to 14-12. They lost 68-62. Seton Hall, gutsy performance, wins this game. I believe that was the game where in the post-game press conference, Rick Pitino, head coach of St. John's, just says, this is the worst coaching experience. This is the most unenjoyable thing I've ever done in my life. He just ripped into his team and just, it was ugly, some of the things he said. But since then, it sparked a fire, obviously, because St. John's is on a 5-game winning streak. Wins against Georgetown on the road, Creighton at home, Butler on the road, DePaul on the road, and Georgetown at home. It really did feel like St. John's had to win all of those to even have a shot at making the tournament. And here we are. They did win all of them. They currently, like I said, sit on the bubble. This game, yeah, like I said, this is going to be absolute cinema. If Rick Pitino breaks out the white suit like he did for the Creighton game, it's all over for Seton Hall. Now, Seton Hall, they've had a very good season. I personally had them projected like bottom 3 in the Big East. I didn't think they were going to be good this year. What Shaheen Holloway has done with this team, very, very good. They really didn't, in conference, they were competing for the Big East crown for a long time. I wouldn't say they lost any teams they shouldn't have. I mean, they lost to Xavier on the road. That you can write that up. But that was the game before. It was them beating UConn at home to start out conference season. So you're always in for a letdown game the next game. They lost to Creighton. They lost to Providence. They lost to Marquette. They lost to Villanova, and they got just housed by UConn in the return matchup at the beginning of September, at the beginning of March. This game, it really is going to be quite an event. Seton Hall swept the season series. They won at Prudential Center 80-65, and then they won on the road 68-62. Listen, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. I think Rick Pitino has this team playing as good of basketball as they have all year. And I expect St. John's to somehow win this game. I see St. John's in the semifinal going up against UConn. The first game of the semifinal window is on Big Fox. So it's like a 5:30 tip or something like that. I think Fox and the Big East kind of knew, hey, like UConn's most likely going to be a 1 seed because they announced that kind of late, I think, in the season that the first semifinal game would be on the Big Fox. I think they kind of saw, hey, UConn most likely going to be the 1 seed. We have the potential for, a Villanova or St. John's or Seton Hall. They're kind of all around that 4 or 5 range that could potentially face off against UConn in a semifinal. Like, hey, that could be entertaining. And look where we are. So I see St. John's somehow winning this game. I don't think it hurts Seton Hall's chances at the tournament, though, because I see this game being played close. Moving on, Creighton, they are the number 3 seed. They are going up against the winner of the Providence-Georgetown game. I think Providence ends up winning that kind of easily, honestly. But Creighton, I mean, they've been pretty good all year. There were obviously a few questions about Greg McDermott near the end of the season, coaching-wise, if he was moving on. He got a new contract done. I believe it's officially done. I don't think this is a Harbaugh situation where they say they got a contract and nothing ever gets signed, and then, whoa, Harbaugh's gone to the NFL. Outside of the St. John's game in the end of February for Creighton, I mean, they were on a roll. They lost Butler and Providence back-to-back, and then they just went on a roll. They beat Xavier, they beat Georgetown, they beat Butler, they beat UConn, they lost to St. John's, then beat Seton Hall, Marquette, and Villanova. Creighton, I mean, they look really good right now. I think they advance here. It's just the question of what happens after this. And they could potentially, there are 2 very good teams that they could go up against. Now, Villanova's not that good of a team, but Marquette still is. The big question about Marquette is Tyler Kolek going to play? That is the big question. He sat out the last 3 games of the season, I believe. He sat out the Creighton game on the road where they lost. He sat out the UConn game at home where they lost. And he sat out the Xavier game, which they won on the road to close out the season with an oblique injury. All reports are saying that he's supposed to be back, but I'm truly not believing it until I see him on the court. I still think that they're better than Villanova, and especially DePaul, if DePaul somehow gets there. I expect Marquette to advance here. So we got semifinal Friday. One semifinal is good old Big East basketball. One's new school Big East basketball. But boy, oh boy, that first game. UConn St. John's. Now, UConn did sweep the season series, but I think Dan Hurley would say the games were too close for comfort. I mean, the game on Festivus, that was at the XL Center. UConn won that game 69-65. And then it was the beginning of February they played at MSG. UConn kind of ran away with it. They let St. John's back in the game. And then they just pulled away at the end. They won 77-64. Also, I don't think there's any love lost between Dan Hurley and Rick Pitino. Those two kind of seem to have a little bit of a feud going on, which makes the Big East better, if we're honest. We need coaching feuds in the Big East like it is the 80s all over again. John Thompson, Coach Boeheim. I mean, you got legends there. Calhoun, you obviously got in the mix. Just so many, Big East legends built this conference. And this game is, you had Lou Carnesecca at St. John's. You had Rick Pitino at Providence at one point. This is going to be a tough game for St. John's because it's going to look like the game in February. You have tickets for both games. UConn is going to buy out most of that building. Now, obviously, I said on Thursday, I think it's going to be more even split. I think more UConn fans will be there, but because of the Seton Hall St. John's game, I think that, there will be less UConn fans there. Friday, no holds barred. That is a UConn building on Friday night. And Rick Pitino is going to, and his players are going to have to coach and play the games of their lives to beat this UConn team. And I don't see it happening. I think UConn advance. I don't really know if there was a question about that, but I don't see them advancing. We move on to the second semifinal. It is Creighton going up against Marquette. And this is a very good game. It does kind of feel inevitable that it's just the winner of this game goes on to lose to UConn kind of atmosphere, but these two split the season series. Both teams won at home. Marquette, that was back in December when they won 72-67. It was the beginning of March when these two played, and reminder, Kolek didn't play in that game, but Creighton won that one 89-75. Both these teams are very good. They're obviously going to make the tournament. Them with UConn have constantly been in the AP Top 25 this year for the Big East. Nobody, I think, cracked in. I think Seton Hall might have at one point. I know St. John's was getting votes at one point. It's truly a very tough game to predict because it really could go either way. I think Creighton end up getting it done, though, because I truly don't know how healthy Kolek's going to be if he plays, and that's a big worry for me. I think Creighton find a way to advance. And we get to the final, the Big East final, and no doubt about it, if UConn makes it this far with only one game there, that is 1,000% going to be a UConn building on Saturday night. And it's going up against Creighton. They just lost to them in February on the road, 85-66, an absolutely dominating performance by Creighton. They were shooting lights out from three. But, you can look back. These two teams faced off in January in Connecticut, and UConn dominated that game 62-48. So, what do I see if we get this game? I see a lot of points. I know in the first game that was in Connecticut, it was kind of a defensive battle, which is why you saw UConn really only score 62. The second game, you saw UConn only score 66, but Creighton shot outstandingly and scored 85. UConn seems to be at a different level right now. This is truly the only thing they haven't won since coming back to the Big East. They've won the regular season now. They won a national title without winning either. it kind of feels like they're focused in on this Big East tournament right now. And I expect the coronation to happen. UConn wins the Big East, and they roll into the tournament as most likely a 1 seed. Well, it is going to be a 1 seed. The question is if they are the number 1 overall seed. I don't think it's going to happen, but I have UConn winning the Big East in what should be an absolutely outstanding Big East tournament. I am hoping that this lives up to the expectations. I've watched so much Big East basketball this year. I feel like I know each team inside and out now. I know DePaul and Georgetown are awful, but I am probably one of a few people that have watched almost all of their Big East games this year, even if, you didn't want to. This should be an outstanding tournament. I'm really looking forward to it. It should be entertainment, especially if UConn goes far. The building's going to be electric. It always is, but when UConn's there and they're good, that building just hits another level, and I am just so excited to see it. So that's going to wrap up this Big East preview. Thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across this video, click like, click subscribe, go back, check out the ACC and Big 12 tournament previews. Come back and check out the Big 10, SEC, and Pac-12 previews. So thank you so much for watching. We will see you again very soon for another episode of Bracket Buster Breakdown.